What's going on, guys? Alex here with 814 EDC, and today I'm ready to do my full review on the Eutektik knives Trinity. So this is obviously, like I said, a Eutektik knife, and this is the budget brand from the mind of Liong Man. This is the only model that he has currently for sale through the Eutektik knives line, but he has two other designs in the works, from my understanding. One is based off of his popular everyday, field duty EDC folder. And then he also has another design that off the top of my head, I cannot really remember too well right now. But this is in via the Apex passaround group, and I have carried it. I have I have gathered my thoughts and opinions on the knife, and I feel I'm ready to do my full review on it. So this is going to be my first full review with my new rating system. So hopefully, everything goes smoothly. I'm just gonna, go down through them, give a rating, try to explain obviously why I think it's that rating. And at the end, we are going to add up and see where I stand, or, see where we stand, where I stand on the knife. And yeah, so we're gonna get right into it. Now, before I jump into specific materials, there are on his website, which I will leave a link to down below in the description if you guys are interested. There are currently 7 different variations of this knife on his website. 2 are sold out, but the rest are all available. So you can get it in black G10, black micarta, gray G10, jade G10, purple G10, and then the 2 sold out ones are orange micarta and green micarta. So this one is obviously in black G10. You have the E for Eutektik knives. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly, Eutektik. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, but nice pivot there. Now for the Trinity, kind of comes from the multiple ways to deploy this knife. So you have a flipper tab, you have a front flipper, and you have a hole. So you have all the ways to deploy this knife. You have a loop over style deep carry clip that goes to the butt end of the knife, but it does have some mushroom shaped screws. I kind of wish that they were countersunk to match the seated clip, but it is lefty or righty carry, which is very nice. Not a super thick knife, relatively thin overall. You have a clip point or Bowie point style blade with a very generous forward finger choy right there. 14C 28N on the blade. Nice sterile blade over here. Just a big enough blade. 3.75 inches, so this is on the bigger side of blades for me personally. Overall length is 8.5 inches. Blade thickness is 0.145 inches. Obviously, it's 14C 28N, like I said. They're calling this a clip point. So this is technically a clip point. Black G10 has a liner lock right in there with a decent amount of lock bar access. It's pretty easy to actuate this knife. And then it weighs comes in with a weight of 3.6 ounces. So yeah, like I said, this is called the Trinity because it is 3 methods of opening. You have the thumb flipper, or the top flipper, the thumb hole, and the additional flipper on the back here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, this is currently for sale on his website. That'll be linked down below in the description if you guys are interested. So yeah, I think so. For the right off the bat, talking about materials, I do think that we're going to give this a 4 out of 5. I think in the way I'm going to do materials rating is I'm going to tie it in with the price point. So is it a good amount of materials for the price point that you're paying? But obviously I kind of keep the price towards the end as a way of kind of, it's just the way my reviews are set up. If you guys are in the knife world, you probably already know what this costs. But for the price point, I do think that this is a 4. I just think that there are plenty of other knives out there that you can get for cheaper with the same materials, 14C28N and black G10. But I still think for sub $100, so that's a little bit of a hint towards the price, I do think that this is, still an adequate, good value, but I'm going to give it a 4. So we're going to go there. Next up, I did add, if you guys saw yesterday, or if you guys, saw yesterday's video where I was talking about my New Year's resolutions and where I was implementing the rating system for the upcoming year and for my reviews. I had materials, action, acoustics, ergos, carry, and then price and value. So that was out of 30 points, 5 each. But on my way home today from work, I was like, you know what, I want to add aesthetic into it because I'm a big aesthetic guy. I love, obviously if a knife looks cool, it's super important to me, and I think it is for most people. So I wanted to add that in there as well. So it's going to be out of 35. But next up, we're going to talk about the aesthetic. Now, for me personally, it doesn't really, do it for me. I'm not a huge clip point style. It's very simple, which I am a fan of simple knives. But, this one just doesn't give me like the fizzy whizzes. It's an okay looking knife. I definitely don't think it's ugly, but I definitely think that there are better looking options out there. And I would not pick this knife aesthetically for what I would want in my collection. Out of his 3 models, my finger didn't want to go up there. Out of his 3 models that I've seen, I definitely would probably pick this one to be not the first one. I think the Field Duty EDC model would be my first one. So again, it's not bad, but it's definitely not my cup of tea. So I'm definitely, not in love with it. So I think I'm going to give it a 3.5 on the rating scales. Again, could be better, but not the worst by any means. So, and I am keeping a little note down here of what the points are. So hopefully at the end, I can do enough math to add up everything and to, get my final score for you guys. So next up, we're going to talk about action. And action is where this really shines. So of course, you have the 3 ways of deployment. Now, when you have 3 ways of deploying a knife, you obviously have a little bit of an issue, or could have an issue with the detent, because when you have 1, 2, 3 ways of deploying the knife, the detent is going to be stronger most times, more often than not, for say the flipper, but then you're going to have a weak front flip or a weak thumb flick, or you're getting a strong middle finger flick and you're going to have a weak front flip, or so on and so forth. But honestly, with this knife, the detent is tuned very nicely. You guys can hear it snapping back into place. So it honestly just fires out. You have a flipper back here with plenty of jimping, nice snappy amount of tension there. There is no blade play. I will say with this knife, I had to tighten the pivot probably 3 times because it kept walking and becoming loose. And it's not my knife, so I don't want to add thread locker or anything like that to it. But I just wanted that, you guys to be aware of that. And I did just tighten it a little bit before the video to make sure everything was good. But you're still getting a nice snappy detent, but a good amount of jimping back here. I prefer the push button rather than the light switch. Light switch just feels, a little, it's always just a little bit awkward, like putting your thumb up here and dragging it back. You can do it fine. I mean, it works well with this knife, but I definitely prefer just landing right on top of the jimping and the flipper tab and just pushing right down. It pops right out. Now for the front flipper. One thing I don't really like with the front flipper is the flipper tab can get in the way if you ride up far here to get, which there is plenty of jimping on the front flipper, which I really like. The jimping just extends into the front flipper jimping. But if you put your hand up too far to grab onto the front flipper, you have the flipper tab up top kind of digging into your skin. And most oftentimes it's just gonna, still fire anyway. But it can be a little bit uncomfortable at first. So I definitely have learned to kind of hold back on the knife. That way when you actuate the knife, it doesn't really hit your fingers too much, but front flipper works really well. Pops has a nice snappy detent, just like the normal flipper. And I really like how, I have plenty of front flippers with just the front flippers like this, but I really like kind of the wheel front flipper to where it kind of rounds around there. It just makes for a really nice front flip. You can just kind of pop it. It's almost like a Zippo. You can do the reach around like so. And then last but not least, you have the middle finger flick, which just fires out of there. Nice snappy thumb flick, index finger flick. You also can slow roll it. Still locked up tight. Now for closing action, it's very, very smooth. Of course, the blade is 3.75 inches. So you have this is a big blade, decent amount of steel coming down, but drops to your thumb. You guys can see with just some movement, it drops home. So really the action is probably my favorite part about this knife. It's just very fun to play with. You get a nice controlled drop. Those are always really satisfying to fidget with and to, definitely, excuse me, definitely having the collection as a, fun toy to play with. Not a toy, but a tool to play with. But just nice and smooth. I don't have enough time to get my thumb out of the way from the flipper tab to, I guess you can do that. Just a little scary. Drops close. So action is really good. All three ways of deploying is awesome. Close is just nice and smooth. You know, no effort at all to close this knife. So I have to give the action a 5 out of 5. Again, I think it's my favorite part of the knife. Definitely the most satisfying, part of the knife in my opinion. And again, for a budget knife at this price, I was honestly really blown away how smooth it was and how just drop shutty it was. It's obviously a pass-around knife, so you're going to be getting a lot of use out of it and a lot of fidgeting with it, but it just is so smooth and so broken in. It's really very satisfying. So again, a 5 out of 5 there. Next up is the Acoustics, which I'm a little bit new to. I definitely like Acoustics, but I'm not really too, attuned to reviewing them. So this might be a little bit of a learning process, learning curve, whatever you want to call it. But snaps open, close, snaps open, close, snaps open, close, snaps open, close, snaps open, close. You do get a nice satisfying thwack when it opens up, and you do get a little bit of a click towards the end. Is it the best? No, not by any means, but it's not the worst. So I'll go 3 on this one. I think that's very adequate, kind of run of the mill, very typical for what you get, I think, of a lot of G10 knives. It's not really going to give you those clanks and those, sort of loud acoustics that we have tended to, learn to enjoy from, titanium knives and so on and so forth. So I think a 3 is very adequate. But next up, we're going to talk about ergos. And ergos are also really good in this knife because, again, it's a bigger knife. You have a 3.75 inch blade, so overall length is 8.5 inches. That's definitely no small knife at all. But choked back here, I can get all 4 fingers of the knife very comfortably. It's very, very nice. The jimping up top there is aggressive enough to give you good grip and good control, but not aggressive enough to be eating your fingers up and to be kind of ripping up things like that. But very comfortable. All 4 fingers on there very easily, like I said, talking to Siri. Still have plenty of room for a second pinky. The pot clip is a loop over style deep carry clip, but honestly, it's not very hot spotty. I think it's just because we're up far enough off of the sort of areas that causes a hot spot a lot on the clip, which is the edge, the back end, but very comfortable. Choked up here, all 4 fingers, middle finger right here on the ladder lock, and nice natural restriction point. 2 fingers follow suit, and then your pointer finger wraps around. And like I said, this is a very generous choil, so if you have big mitts, this will be very comfortable. And thumb can either land here on the jipping, or it can land out here, kind of halfway up the blade for real specific things, or cut through, push cuts. Pinch grip works really well. Not the best blade style to do pinch grips with, but it definitely works. You can do a reverse hammer or draw, this is a reverse hammer for cut through rope. If you have to use this in a self-defense manner, you can too, but again, not the best blade shape. G10 is very comfortable, has a nice amount of, sort of texturing to it, but it's not like sandpaper G10, which is really nice. Pot clip can be reversible, so that's nice for you lefties out there. It is really comfortable. I probably will say this is my second favorite thing from this knife after the action, because it is nice, comfortable. That choil feels really good. So I'm going to give this a 4.5 on the ergo scale. Nothing really to write home about. Could it be a little bit more comfortable? Yes, but it's definitely in the higher end of comfortability when it comes to ergos on pocket knives. So next up, we're going to talk about carry. Now this is coming in at 3.6 ounces, which is really impressive considering, again, not a small knife. You have a 3 3/4 inch blade, so it's a decent sized knife, but it sits in the pocket well. You can see the pot clip goes almost deeper than the knife itself, which is nice. I did talk about earlier how I wish that these screws were countersunk into the clip because the clip is seated in the G10, but you do have some mushroom cap screws. I don't really have too much of an issue with it. It didn't catch up on anything for me, but I know a lot of people probably are going to have issues with catching on seam, or excuse me, the lip of their pockets, but sits down in like this, goes to the butt of the knife, it pretty much disappears. It's lightweight for the size. Definitely does not, when you reach your hand in your pocket, you know it's in there, but when you're carrying and you aren't, really thinking about it, you can't tell it's there at all. You do have a flipper tab down here, so if you're down for change, chapstick, coins, things of those nature, you might have a risk of going down and pulling it up out because the jimping is pretty aggressive, but I didn't have any issues with that. I was lucky enough to not really, catch anything or have it come up in my pocket really at all. So for the size, for the, and combined with the weight, I do think this carries very well. Of course, you have the flipper tab, so it's not going to be the best carry in the world. And it's not the smallest knife, so it's not going to be the best carry in the world. But I really can't complain too much. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 on the carry scale. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we have price point and value. So this is coming in at $85 on Liong Man's website, which again, I'll leave a link to down below. I think $85 for black G10, 14C28N, or 6 other models, Marcarta G10. Multiple ways of deploying the knife with a flipper, a front flipper, and a thumb hole. I think that's really nice too. If you don't see that a whole lot in that price range of being such a multi-dimensional knife with the opening methods. Just a buttery smooth closing action. Again, snappy detent, just drops shut very, very nicely. Good ergos. So really, materials, ergos, value, cutability with the blade, which I don't talk about obviously a ton. I should. It's a knife review. I try to tie that in with the ergos, but it doesn't come down to a super thin edge. It's about a medium-sized blade stock. So it's not the best cutter in the world, but it definitely performs very well. Sharp edge, which was really nice. I think 14C is probably one of my favorite blade steels of taking a keen edge. So for $85, I can absolutely recommend it. Again, I think I'm going to knock it a peg though, because you can get 14C on knives that are, take the QSP Canary for instance. You can get that for like $40 with G10 and 14C28N. That's basically what this knife is. Now I know Liong is selling these by himself, so he's going to have a little bit of a price jump there. But again, I think these are maybe, I could easily think these would be sold for $60. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 because I still think it's a good value. I just don't think it is, the best value in the world. So we're going to try to add this up real quick. Need to learn how to use my calculator on my computer, because now we're gonna have a little bit of an awkward silence, but play the Jeopardy theme. Dun 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 dun. Da, 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 da. All right, so if my math is correct, which I'm pretty sure it is, I have this knife, the Liong Man designed Eutektik Trinity, coming in at a 28, which on my scales, my rating scales, that is falling in the fantastic category. So 27.5 to 30 points is fantastic. So the Trinity is falling in the fantastic category. And again, I think that's adequate. There are some small gripes I have with this knife, but I really enjoyed it overall. For the materials, for the price point, great action, great ergos. Just a really good budget knife, sub $100, $85. I think is fair. Again, could be a little bit cheaper, and a few other things I had a little bit of an issue with, but overall, great knife, no qualms with it. And yeah, so I think my first review with my categorized rating scale went pretty well. Went a little bit longer, but I won't have to, I'm going to try to be around 50 minutes per review. This is going to be closer to 20, so I do apologize. And if you guys are still watching this, I really do appreciate you guys. You're the MVP, real MVP, excuse me. But yeah, so this was my full review on the Liong Man designed Eutektik Trinity. Thank you to the Apex group for allowing me to check this out. And thank you guys for always supporting. Leave a comment down below. What are your guys' thoughts on the Trinity? Do you agree with my rating? Let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But I'm going to wrap this up now. So thank you guys again so much for watching. I greatly appreciate each and every single one of you guys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your morning, evening, day, night, whenever you're watching this. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.